Hello, everybody. Texas is on to the 2025 season. We're here to tell you who the top 5 players returning to the Texas Longhorns are. Let's get started with it. Gerald, who is your 5th player returning to the Texas Longhorns?
Yeah, I had to hem and haw quite a bit on this one, but I think Michael Taft is my number 5. I really decided like where I wanted to put him on the list because he's a guy for Texas. When you talk about like culture, when you talk about culture setters, you talk about the culture that Steve Sarkisian wants to bring in this locker room. You can't look any farther than Andrew Makuba, right? He is a than Michael Taft, right? He is a guy who, with Andrew Makuba leaving, that's where I was going, right? Texas needs somebody in that secondary that's going to be your field general. That's going to be your extension of the defensive staff on the field. He's going to be the guy who gets the younger dudes because it's going to be a younger secondary unit next year. There's going to be some guys that haven't played a ton. So you've got to get a guy back there who can be an extension of the coaching staff, who can be that tenured guy, who can be the one that Texas can count on when things kind of are when things are going maybe not as well as they could. So I absolutely think Michael Taft can be that guy, and I'm excited to see him back this year.
100%. I don't disagree with that at all. I think Michael Taft is definitely important. I have him a little bit higher on the list. Number 5 for me is returning in multiple ways. He's coming back to the Texas program, but he's also coming back from injury. I have Cedric Baxter. I think we saw this year how much we miss Cedric Baxter on this team. I mean, there's a real chance if Cedric Baxter's healthy, we're talking about a team that only lost 1 game and possibly was the national champion. Like, that's how important I think he would have been, because we would have been able to run more inside zone. He's much better of a pass blocker as well. We missed that sorely. I think that was the biggest thing, honestly, we did miss. So him returning to as close to form as we can get him is definitely going to help this team running the ball. It's going to help in pass blocking situations and even catching out of the backfield. He's pretty good with that as well. Remember, this guy started over Jonathan Brooks. Steve Sarkisian watched him and said, I want this guy to start over Jonathan Brooks. We know how that turned out after about a game and a half. Jonathan Brooks was started, but guess what? Jonathan Brooks is a hell of a player and was a second-round pick and would have been probably a late first-round pick if he didn't tear his ACL. So I think Cedric Baxter is a special player. Hopefully he can return to form.
And we talk about Texas's inability to run inside zone this year. I don't think that's the case if CJ Baxter is here, right? Steve Sarkisian likes to run inside zone. CJ Baxter is an inside zone guy. I'm excited to see it.
100%. Number 4 for me, kind of weird. I had to put him on the list. Arch Manning. I put Arch Manning on the list. He is returning to Texas. He's started, a couple games, less than a handful, but he could have transferred. We all know as Texas fans that never was going to happen, but you know how the outside media portrays that.
Yeah.
So I do have him as number 4. I think it's honestly the ceiling of this team next year is going to be determined by how good he is. If he's good, I think this is probably a 9-10 win team. If he's great, we're talking about a team that can win the national championship because we do have the talent around him. I think you're going to see the red zone improve because he can run and extend plays. But again, guys, you don't want your quarterback to be that battering ram either, because eventually he will get hurt. That doesn't work. There's been one guy in my life personally that I think could take it for a whole season. That was Cam Newton. Arch Manning's a big guy. He's not Cam Newton. So definitely an important piece. We're going to go with, as far as he leads us, it's going to be fun to watch him. I know that. And there's going to be a lot of talk around him.
Yeah. And, I did not have Arch Manning on my list because he's returning, but he wasn't a returning starter. So I love that I kind of got you on number 5 on our top players departing. You got me on this one. But like you said, Arch Manning, his ceiling is Texas's ceiling. And I think we see that ceiling is going to be pretty high. Again, the offensive line is a question, and we'll talk about that here in a couple minutes, but I'm with the Arch Manning. He needs to have a good year for Texas to be good.
100%. Number 4, Gerald. Who's your number 4 player?
Yeah, I've got DeAndre Moore. DeAndre Moore is going to be a key piece to the offensive success of Texas and Arch Manning, right? DeAndre Moore is a guy who came in with really high expectations. That passing game needs a dude, right? And DeAndre Moore is the closest we've seen to a dude in this group, right? There's a lot of talent. That 2025 recruiting class has a ton of talent. Ryan Wingo is still from the 24 class. Parker Livingston, right? Freddie Dubose. Like, there are guys there, but of the wide receivers that are at Texas, DeAndre Moore is the only one that's got significant snaps and has got significant touches. And Arch Manning, God bless him, incredible talent. Young quarterback needs a safety blanket. That is every quarterback's I need a go-to guy, right? Jordan Whittington was that for Quinn Ewers for a while, right? And then it was this year Gunnar Helm, right? So is DeAndre Moore, can he become that guy when Arch needs to find somebody underneath that's open? Is he a guy who can become that? I think he's got the talent to do that. I want to see it on the field.
100%. I don't disagree with that at all. You saw he got up to a kind of a slow start, and then he kind of settled in, played well, and then kind of finished kind of slow. So just more consistency is what I want to see from him. He had a couple key drops that I'd like to see.
Yeah.
One that led to a turnover in the Clemson game. Can't be doing
Yeah.
that. But I think the potential is definitely there. I mean, he was a high 4-star recruit, so definitely a lot of potential there. Who's your number 3?
My number 3, Trey Moore, coming back to Texas. I cannot overstate how big of an addition this is going to be for the defense, because what fans wanted to see from Trey Moore wasn't necessarily what Trey Moore was adding early in the season, right? He came in from UTSA with those gaudy sack numbers, and that's not necessarily what he did or what he was doing, right? Trey Moore is your dirty work defensive lineman, your defensive end, and I freaking love those guys, right? The guy who's going to say, I'm going to keep my outside arm free. You're not cutting back here. I'm going to force you inside and let the linebackers handle it. That is what Trey Moore did early in the season. Now, as Colin Simmons and those other folks started to come on more, you saw Trey Moore's sack numbers increase as the season went on, because there's extra attention going to the opposite side. So then that skill, that body, those long arms he's able to leverage those and become the type of guy that Texas fans thought he was. So I think it's going to continue, because Colin Simmons is going to continue to develop, right? Anthony Hill, Leona Leifau are going to continue to develop. And so it's going to create more one-on-one opportunities for Trey Moore. And I think that's going to be a good thing for his production, and Texas fans are going to love it.
No, 100%. I don't disagree with any of that. I think it was really important, not just for that, but for the leadership. And I think you also see him slide inside a little bit more, because that's where he projects more as the NFL. So again, versatility. I think that's the thing Sark wants on offense and defense. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they use him next year. Number 3 for me is Michael Taft. I agree with what you said when you said that he was 5th. We need someone to step up, and he was already a leader, but just become even more of that vocal leader. Because again, you lose Andrew Makuba, you lose Jahdae Barron, you lose Alfred Collins, you lose Vernon Broughton. He's the longest tenured player basically you have now on defense. He is. So he's got to step up, provide more leadership. And then I would like to see him just get a little bit better in coverage. I think that's where he struggled a little bit. One-on-one, you saw that with Cam Scatabo and Arizona State, but everything else he does really well. He's a really good tackler, and just continue to get better, put on a little bit more weight so you can thump people a little bit more. I think that would help, but I'm really excited to get Michael Taft back. He's definitely one of the guys I was looking forward to seeing if they would come back.
Yeah, absolutely huge addition. And again, culture, personality, and skill set, can't beat it.
Number 2 for me is Anthony Hill. I just expect a gigantic year for him next year. I mean, he was already great this year. Over 100 tackles, 8.5 sacks. As a linebacker is ridiculous. I think there's a real chance next year this guy could have like 120 tackles and 10 sacks and be the best linebacker in the country. I think he was already one of the 10 best linebackers in the country. And I think there's, like I said, the potential for him to be the best. And the only thing holding him back is himself. Like, he's got all the talent in the world. You can tell he's learning the position well enough. And I think he'll continue to learn the position. And he just needs to be able to trust himself now. I think when he gets to that point to where he knows everything in front of him and can read it, it's going to be very, very scary. And I think next year could be that year. We could potentially be talking about a Butkus Award winner with Anthony Hill.
Yeah, and I'll talk more about Anthony Hill in just a second. Spoiler alert for my number 1. But yeah, Anthony Hill was already one of the best linebackers in the conference, and he still has another year of growth ahead of him. He can only get better. My number 2, Colin Simmons. I mentioned him already, and I feel like maybe it's cheating to have a pair of edge rushers, but like that is what's going to make the difference in modern college football, right? Colin Simmons was everything we wanted him to be, and then some. I think it's wild. Like, the expectations for Colin Simmons coming in as a freshman were astronomical, and he somehow exceeded those expectations. It took him a couple of weeks to get his feet underneath him, but once he adjusted to the game speed, once he adjusted to big boy football, like, he looked the part. He probably is one of those guys that if he could go early, would probably be a late round draft pick, right? He's not going to be a first, but like, as he continues to develop, like as a 19-year-old, right? Dude was at prom last year. As a 19-year-old, he was one of the better edge rushers in the country, and that development is going to continue. I want to see him take another step, be more consistent, really continue to create havoc. And even if, and this is the caveat I always throw on stuff like this, you may not see his numbers go up. You may see them plateau or even fall off. But what that does, the reason is they're dedicating more resources to blocking him, right? Which defense is just a numbers game. So if you have two guys taken up by one defender, that gives the defense a numbers advantage. So you may not see Colin Simmons put up gaudy numbers this year or this coming year in 2025, but that's because defense or offenses are having to dedicate a tackle and a running back or a tackle and a guard to take care of him. And that's something that defensive coordinators love. I love seeing. It creates a numbers advantage for the defense.
Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous in the playoffs for him. I mean, he was just eating it up, man. Like he was, early on, there were questions, man, is this too much? Da, 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 da. And then after like game 3, it was on from there. Like he was amazing since that point. And he was getting double teams at some point in the playoffs because that's how good this guy can be. This guy is good enough to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. He has those type of tools. People talk about Jeremiah Smith being the number 1 pick coming out. Colin Simmons is a first-round pick if he comes out. I'm pretty confident saying that. And I think there's really only 2 guys on defense as freshmen you can say that about, and that's Colin Simmons and Dylan Stewart from South Carolina. So it's going to be exciting to watch him, and we might as well say it. He's my number 1, and that's the reason. I think the talent there is just so astronomical. I think he's got the highest upside of anybody on this team. I really believe that. And we haven't had a guy off the edge like this in a very long time. I mean, you're probably going all the way back to like a Sergio Kindle or a Brian Arakpo type. And that's been like 15 years. So really, really exciting stuff from him. And I agree. I don't know if it's fair to expect 12, 13 sacks next year. I expect probably about the same, anywhere between 8 to 10 sacks from him again next year. But he's going to be taking on so much more responsibility, and teams are going to be throwing so much more at him. As long as he can eat up those double teams and allow his other players to eat around him, that's all I really care about.
I'm with you. And I think it will continue. I think he is going to be one of those guys that creates opportunities for other guys on the defense. And my number 1, I spoiled it already, Anthony Hill coming back as a junior. Probably going to be the last time we get to see him in burnt orange. Fans, take every snap of Anthony Hill in burnt orange and cherish it, right? This dude, and this is going to I wanted to see a linebacker from the state of Texas like this at the University of Texas for years and years and years and years. And we just, the state of Texas doesn't produce that level of elite linebacker play that often. And for some reason, Texas struggled to land them. So when Ant Hill decided to decommit from A&M to go to Texas, it was revolutionary. It was blockbuster. And he lived up to the billing. He absolutely lived up to the billing. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think about the all-time defenses, right? That 05 defense, those 09 defenses. I would probably slot him in over some of the linebackers on that unit, right? When you look at those rosters that had 5, 6, 7, 8 NFL guys on them, he might fit in some of those all-time defenses. Now, I will say he's not perfect. He has room to grow, right? Will Howard saw some stuff he liked in the pass game against him in coverage. He picked on him a couple of times early in that game. So I think there's some room to develop and some room to improve. But when you talk about guys living up to the billing, we talked about Colin Simmons just a minute ago, got to talk about Ant Hill in the same breath. Dude came in with very high expectations, and middle linebacker is a hard position to play, right? Last year, they didn't load him with that, which was great, right? They let him be like a homing missile, right? Play outside, find ball, see ball, be disruptive. Having to shift in, adding all that responsibility, adding all that mental processing, and still being able to play fast and physical, there are not a ton of guys out there that can do that. Anthony Hill is one of a kind.
Yeah, he's 6'3", like 225, and moves around crazy. I mean, you're going to see him at the NFL level play off the edge and linebacker. He's a freak. Yeah. So it's going to be exciting to watch him, like you said, and it's going to be his last year unless, knock on wood, he gets hurt. And even then, it still probably will end up being his last year. The dude's a freak. He's lived up to the billing. And it's cool to have guys like this where I think with this roster, you're going to see guys like this, not guys of this nature, but guys close to this consistently. And it's going to be awesome to watch.
It is continuing. Like, Texas has gone from the place where 5 stars go to die to where guys transfer to get a first-round pick, right? Like, that to me is the biggest Texas is back moment ever. We were where 5 stars went to die for a long, long time, and now we're talking about multiple 5-star guys being top picks. Feels good.
Yeah, 100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Like it says on the bottom, we're here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Join us live. Get in the conversation. We'd like to have a call-in show at some point to hear your voice and opinion on everything. We love talking ball with you guys. And stay tuned for more content. Again, around the clock, we're going to keep this Texas content going. There's going to be a lot to talk about. Again, Arch Manning coming in. We know how that's going to be. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe. And horns always up, Gerald.
Hook 'em.